Staying Alive by Vandana Shiva, published in 1998, stands as a seminal work in the field of ecofeminism. Vandana Shiva, renowned as an environmental activist and radical scientist, has devoted her life to advocating for diversity and indigenous knowledge, with a prolific output of works on agriculture and food. She has been a staunch opponent of agricultural development through genetic modification. Her contributions to the field were recognized with the Right Livelihood Award, also known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. In 1993, Staying Alive explores the interconnectedness of ecological crises, patriarchy, colonization, and the oppression of women, presenting these issues through a feminist lens. Shiva critiques the notion of development, which she argues is biased towards men and dismissive of diversity, interconnection, and the interdependent nature of the environment. She labels this form of development as mal-development, highlighting its foundation in exploitation, injustice, and inequality. The book emphasizes the significant role women have played historically and provides an account of their ongoing struggle for environmental justice. At the outset, Shiva questions the fundamental concepts of development, rejecting the modern science and economics-based approaches. She contends that such development perpetuates a cycle of colonization, rooted in exploitation and the exclusion of women. Forests, seen merely as resources for industry, are stripped of their essential ecological roles. Shiva argues that the history of development is marked by the destruction of nature, women, and cultures, with Third World women, tribal communities, and peasants continuing to fight against these forces. She further criticizes modern science and economic assumptions, rooted in Western patriarchy, which prioritize profit over ecological balance and sustainability. In the second chapter, Shiva challenges the perceived neutrality and universality of modern science, arguing that it is a patriarchal project designed to displace women and nature from productive work. She describes modern science and economic progress as inherently violent and driven by capitalist interests, contrasting this with the non-violent, interconnected, and diverse principles of femininity. Modern science, according to Shiva, enslaves women and nature while denying the value of traditional knowledge held by women and tribal communities. She critiques the reductionist nature of modern science and economics, highlighting their detrimental impact on both women and the environment. The third chapter emphasizes women's crucial role in human survival, providing evidence that human gathering has been more pivotal than hunting. Shiva discusses how women's philosophies and practices contribute to the production and renewability of life. She critiques the focus on destructive male-made tools, noting that a significant portion of modern research is devoted to defense, reflecting a preference for destruction over survival. Contrasting this, women in sustenance economies have historically produced and reproduced daily necessities without exploiting nature. Shiva underscores the expertise women have in holistic and ecological knowledge, which has allowed them to conserve and sustain nature through traditional practices. However, patriarchal thoughts have eroded this traditional relationship, devaluing the roles of nature and women in life production and reproduction. Chapter 4 delves into women's and tribal communities, Expertise in forestry. Shiva discusses how colonial acts like those of 1878 and 1927 dismissed this expertise in favor of scientific forestry aimed at profit maximization. This led to the displacement of women and tribal communities from forests, which were vital for their survival. In response, numerous ecological movements led by women emerge, advocating for a life-enhancing paradigm rooted in feminine principles, as opposed to the life-destroying profit-driven paradigm. In Chapter 5, Shiva highlights women's significant role in food gathering, viewing forests as mothers that provide sustenance, fodder, wood, and medicinal herbs. She contrasts this with the patriarchal perspective that sees forests solely as resources for extraction. Shiva critiques male-centric historical narratives that exclude women's economic and scientific contributions. Chapter 6 addresses the water crisis threatening the survival of all life forms. Shiva attributes this crisis to the reductionist nature of science, which favors high-yield crops, requiring more water, over local crops suited to the environment. She critiques this approach, advocating for a return to sustainable practices, rooted in traditional knowledge. In the concluding chapter, Shiva critiques the modern scientific and developmental worldview, responsible for current economic and ecological crises. She argues that adopting the feminine principle offers a non-violent, non-gendered, and human-inclusive alternative. Shiva emphasizes the role of Third World women in conserving traditional sustainable methods. Through ecological movements, Staying Alive provides a unique perspective on development, intertwining gender and ecological contexts. Shiva argues that development has been an exclusionary project that deprives women and tribal communities of their roles and expertise. She presents evidence of traditional knowledge and women's contributions being undervalued due to male-dominated historical narratives. Shiva critiques the high consumption, profit-driven society and advocates for respecting the traditions and practices of indigenous communities. She emphasizes the importance of diversity and calls for thorough research before dismissing traditional practices. However, the book has its limitations. Shiva's interpretations of history sometimes contain fallacies and conservative, radical views. She romanticizes the lives of women and tribal communities, overlooking their struggles and challenges. Her skepticism towards modern science and rational thinking leads to a denial of the achievements brought about by scientific advancements. While she critiques the reductionist nature of modern science, she sometimes fails to provide substantial evidence for her arguments, relying instead on supporting arguments from scholars. Despite these shortcomings, Staying Alive is an accessible and thought-provoking book. Shiva constructs her arguments effectively, though at times repetitively and selectively. She offers a different lens through which to view history, emphasizing the ecological and feminist perspectives. By highlighting the dangers of our current consumption patterns and advocating for the voices of Third World countries, Shiva contributes significantly to the discourse on environmental justice and sustainable development. Top of form, bottom of form.